Most of you will be aware that I don't really like to do spoiler-free book reviews. I find it a bit redundant to talk about a book without actually talking about the book, especially when that book is focused on plot. However, I will make an exception this time because the book is brand spanking new. I think it only came out last week, so hardly anyone has had a chance to actually read it yet. And nothing happens. There's nothing to spoil. Mickey 7 by Edward Ashton. This time last week I had never ever heard of this book or the author, but I did cover a story on Sci-Fi News about Oscar-winning Parasite director Bong Joon-ho's next project. He is going to be adapting this into a film, and it's very likely to be starring the Batman himself, Robert Pattinson. My thought process was, if this unpublished book, if the concept of this story is so strong that it attracts someone like Bong Joon-ho, then I'm very curious. I really liked Host and Snowpiercer. I trust this director when he leans into science fiction. I'm also always on the hunt for the next easy to read, fun, but still kind of deep science fiction book. Things like The Martian, Project Hail Mary, Wool, Old Man's War, the Bobbyverse, even something like what Becky Chambers does. I really love those simple palette cleansers to fit in between all the Gene Wolfe and Philip K. Dick. Mickey 7 appeared to be that kind of book. The premise, the elevator pitch, and the first 20 pages were exactly what I was expecting. I was a happy reader. It goes a little something like this. In the future, humans have spread out around the galaxy. The backstory doesn't really matter at this point. We colonise distant planets by sending one-way expeditions. In the case of Mickey 7, it's a freezing cold snowy planet. There's about 200 humans. It feels a lot like John Carpenter's The Thing. We're isolated, it's cold outside. There's even dangerous praying mantis like aliens outside. So far so good. Mickey is a very special member of this crew. He's the only person in the whole facility that is classified an expendable. This genetic printing machine has a copy of his DNA and a record of his memories from the last time that he saved them or something. The technology and the science is a little bit hand wavy. It's very convenient for the plot, but it absolutely works. More importantly, the purpose of Mickey is to have someone in the crew that can do all the really dangerous tasks. He's a bit like a guinea pig stuntman, and it's okay if he dies doing these things because this machine can just produce another Mickey, put the memories in his brain, and he'll be okay. That's exactly what he signed up for. The story kicks off with Mickey number 7. Mickey 7, so he's already died 6 times before. He's now stuck down an icy crevasse with the flesh-eating, dangerous, praying mantis aliens. So he's completely fucked. So they make a Mickey 8. But, and here's the big twist, it's all in the first 20 pages. Mickey 7 doesn't actually die. He manages to escape. He walks back to base. He goes to his bunk. And there, asleep in his bed, is the new version of himself, Mickey 8. So they make sweet love. I'm only kidding. They don't make sweet love. They don't do that. That would have been really interesting though. Far more interesting than anything that this book does after that intriguing first 20 pages. This is why I say there's nothing to spoil. Not really. Because the possibilities for the plot involving clones and meeting different versions of yourself are absolutely huge. And we just don't get any of that. Instead, that idea just stops there with the 2 Mickeys. And the book attempts to be some sort of comedic farce about 2 different versions of the same person keeping the secret from the rest of the crew and mostly arguing about who gets the bigger portion of the rations. Here's a great example of what we do with this amazing concept. One of the Mickeys has sprained his wrist and he's got like purple bruising, and the other Mickey leaves the room and goes to dinner probably and doesn't put the wrist support on. Oh no, somebody sees that Mickey without the wrist support and says, Mickey, your wrist has healed really quickly. So the other Mickey shouts at him, Mickey, you idiot, you've got to be more careful when you leave the room. You've got to put the wrist support on. Oh, shut up. I'm really hungry. Give me more of the food. No, you're an idiot. No, you are. Well, I'm hungry, and they repeat this a few times, and then they argue some more, but not that much. It never gets that intense, but they bicker and they disagree about how hungry they are, and I'm sure one of them they do the same thing, but with t-shirts this time. You can't go out wearing the blue t-shirt because I'm wearing the red t-shirt, and if someone, it's boring.
Hello, Moid of the Future here. Thank you for tuning into one of our archive videos, which was recorded many moons ago. Media Death Cult has evolved a lot over the years, so be sure to check out the more recent projects on the channel. You can support what we do here by grabbing yourself a t-shirt or a mug at the merch store, using Buy Me a Coffee, which is an online tipping service, or you can actually join the cult on Patreon and gain access to our exclusive Discord server, the best read-alongs in the galaxy, and the podcast, Radio Death Cult. Links to all that good stuff in the description of this video. Thank you so much. Peace!
I was always expecting an escalation of this Mickey thing. Like, we'll get more and more Mickeys, and it will get more complicated and more interesting, but never more comedic, because it's never funny. Or maybe we can twist the idea and do something interesting, like in The Fly, or 100 other books and films that do really great things with the idea of clones and multiple versions of something. we never get there. Yeah, the main plot of the book, the actual story, the forward-facing timeline was very, very disappointing. But to be fair, Edward Ashton does want to talk about something a little bit deeper. I think he wants a conversation about life, death, and immortality. The story of the ship of Theseus comes up more than once. You're aware of this thought experiment, right? The idea of a wooden sailing ship that travels all the way around the world, and along the voyage, all the bits of wood that are broken or need repairing are replaced with new pieces of wood, and by the time it gets all the way back to where it started, every single piece of wood has been replaced. So is it in fact the same ship? You can kind of see where this is going. That idea is applied to Mickey and to humans in general. You've heard that all of our molecules are gradually replaced over, is it 7 or 10 years? So Mickey is physically regrown, and it's just his memories that are plopped back in there. And indeed, even you and me, we're not physically the same person that we were born. So is that still Mickey? Is this still us? What does all of that really mean? But the whole concept is just plonked in the middle of the book. It's conversations between two people, and they don't get very far with it. They just kind of bring it up like that. Oh, the ship of Theseus thing. And it's left for us to think about it, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I must admit that I did get quite a bit out of thinking about downloadable consciousness. It's a fascinating subject. But the Bobbyverse books do it on a much bigger and more elaborate scale, on a far more entertaining stage. The book does fill in some backstory, so it's not just a boring straight line narrative. We do jump back in time and find out how some of the other Mickeys died and why Mickey took this job in the first place. It's more interesting than the plot, but it's still not that great. The best part of the book was a couple of paragraphs telling the story about this other human that had access to the same technology that made hundreds of copies of himself, and because he had some egomaniac desire to rule the galaxy with his own clone army. I want that story. I wanted to read about that. But instead, it only lasted a few lines, and then we come back to this bickering between Mickey 7 and Mickey 8 in their bedroom. Mickey 7, he's not supposed to live, but he'll do anything to survive. Really? Anything? What, you mean like hiding in his bedroom? Or are we talking about the thing that happened right at the very end of the book, which wasn't that great? I'm not buying it. So that's it. I was very disappointed in the scope of the whole thing. I thought it was going to be so much bigger, and the philosophical questions, which are inherently very interesting, are just not explored that much, or not in a very fulfilling manner. And it wasn't funny. It wasn't funny at all. I mentioned the humour because it definitely goes for that quirky funny thing, like The Martian and Project Hail Mary and the Bobbyverse, and it just fails. And I never ever liked Mickey. He was bland, he wasn't likeable, he wasn't a complete arsehole, he wasn't anything really. Think about Mark Watney in The Martian. That's the character that you have to spend the whole book with, and he's also quite bland and scientific, but he is genuinely funny. His monologue in his internal thoughts are really interesting to read about. The same in Project Hail Mary. There's so much heart in that book without having to go too far. And the Bobbyverse is a great example of that, because each clone is slightly different, but there's a lot of love, there's a lot of heart, there's a lot of personality to everything that book does. Mickey 7, I didn't give a shit about the colony, whether the whole thing was destroyed or fucked up or everybody died. I didn't really care for Mickey. I didn't care for any of the characters. And that's normally not a problem for me. I'm more of an ideas man, but the idea wasn't that great either. So I genuinely didn't care what was happening throughout any of this book. I do appreciate the language being very simple, and it was very easy to read. I did say at the beginning of the review that that's exactly what I'm looking for in a book like this. But I think it went a step too far. The flow of the conversation and the actual words that he was using became so predictable. I just knew what was going to turn up on the page. It felt like I was a few seconds ahead. It's not the most annoying book that I've ever read, not by a long way. But if you're looking for some easy fun, just like your mum, you should only end up here if you've already read all of those other books that I mentioned earlier. And what the hell is Bong Joon-ho going to do with this? There's still a really great core concept hiding within this book, but he needs to expand the idea and magnify the good bits. A score for Mickey 7. Oh Mickey, you're so fine. You're so fine. You don't blow my mind. You're a 4 out of 10. Have you read Mickey 7? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Are you somewhere here in the middle? I suspect that some people like this kind of thing, but I also think there's going to be some comments that agree with me that there's just not enough here. Whatever your opinion, let us know in the comments, please.